Okay, so today we are talking about poetry, really all of this week. We're going to be reading a lot of Irish poetry. I originally picked Irish poetry, just one of them, actually, just one poem at first, because I love Irish poetry. I didn't when I was in high school. Okay, I was not exposed to it until college. It's so good. It's just so good. I don't know what it is about their country. A lot of their classic poetry was written during this war-torn time, and it's just beautiful. And a lot of it is also really like symbolic and includes a lot of nature. And Ireland is a gorgeous place with some gorgeous nature. And anyway, I just love Irish poetry. And then I realized that this week is St. Patrick's Day. And then I was like, okay, we're going to do Irish poetry every day. So today we're going to do background, and then the rest of the week we'll be studying that. But we're going to do some vocab, and then you're going to practice the vocab on Bookit, and then you're going to take your quiz at the end of class, okay? We still have our daily quizzes, and we will have a weekly quiz Friday. Coming up next week, just to kind of give you a fair warning, we will be doing something called interim testing. It is a mock STAR test, okay? I don't necessarily want you to be prepared for this. I mean, I do, obviously, for the STAR, but this is to gauge where you are, and then we're going to go really in depth with our intervention and kind of helping you in ways that you need moving forward, but we need to kind of gauge and see where you're at. And because this is an interim assessment, it's only going to tell us the percentage of what you're likely to make. So it goes by approaching, which means failing, basically, meets, which means you pass, masters means it's like commended, what commended used to be on tax. I don't even know if y'all took tax. It's been a while. But commended is like the best of the best, right? Really high score. So that's what masters is on this. Now, this will tell us you are like 95% likely to receive masters, okay? Or you're 90% likely to get approaches.
Can you shortly call the office, please? Can you shortly call the office?
Sorry. So anyway, that is kind of what we'll be doing next week, and then we'll be breaking it down in groups. We'll go over writing, and we'll do some real in-depth work on STAR questions to get you prepared. Your test is on April 20th, so it's coming up soon. We've got a month and 5 days. It's a difficult test. We need to be prepared for it. Okay. Anyway, moving on, we're going to cover poetry. Sometimes it's on the test, sometimes it's not. Better to be prepared, and it's the same types of questions anyway. And poetry, I think, is just so much fun. Okay, so starting with symbolism. You probably know this word just from your daily life. It's a pretty common word. Something is symbolic of something else. Our literary definition is to represent ideas or qualities of something else. Usually that has a deeper meaning. We just went with the basic definition. So if you'll think back to when we studied A Christmas Carol, and Marley, there was Scrooge, and then Marley, his business partner who had died, wore the chains. And the chains were symbolic of the greed that chained him down, right? He could not, they were made of gold, and he couldn't see past that greed, and he was chained to it. He was consumed with this addiction of greed. So that's a good example of symbolism. Usually you'll see real common things like apples, water, hearts, things like that. The sun, water and the sun, symbolic of life. Apples, symbolic of new life, also eternal life and death, due to the Bible, which kind of brings us to our next definition, which is an illusion. So not illusion with an I, those are like the magic tricks, right? That's like a trick of the eyes. Illusion with an A is when you're referring to another person or piece of literature or event. Typically, it's a piece of literature. So if you're reading Shakespeare, anything like that, and it mentions the Bible or it mentions Greek mythology, which most classic texts do, okay? The poems we're going to read are going to talk about spiritual things. One of them, it's going to be about Irish mythology. The one we read tomorrow, it's going to talk about who they consider the God of love. He references him. That is an allusion, okay? And at the time, it was a popular work that everyone knew. So let's say that you were writing a song and you mention something from a TikTok, something that's gone viral. Now, first of all, music is poetry. So if you say that you don't like poetry, then you don't like music, okay? And every year I have students try to argue with me on this one. I don't really know why. If it has lyrics, it's poetry. Now, if it's just instrumental, then it's just music. It's not poetry. But if it has lyrics, it is poetry. If it's a song, it is poetry. Okay. It's spoken poetry. It's saying poetry, but it is in fact poetry. So if any song out there that you hear, any rap song, anything, if they reference anything that's gone viral, if they reference a TikTok or a book or a movie or a famous person that we all know and we all know who they're talking about, that is an allusion. They're alluding to that, okay? Let's see. Number 3 is meter. Okay, so this applies specifically to poetry. The other two, symbolism and allusion, you'll see them in all sorts of texts, particularly fiction and poetry. Meter, meter is specifically for poetry. That got kind of small. I'll try to zoom in. A regular pattern of stressed and unstressed syllables in a line of poetry. Okay, so really it's just a syllable count. However many, and in poetry, you, I should have had this pulled up. There is, I wonder if I can write on my screen. There's a way of counting the meter. And so if it's a word that you exaggerate on that part of the syllable, you write a dash. And if it's short, you write a U. So this would be short. A regular pattern. Pattern is going to be 2 syllables. You see what I mean? They break it down by syllables, and that's the meter. We won't really do any of that. That's as you get into like your junior year, you'll start annotating poetry. You'll do a little bit of annotations here, but you won't really count meter. Okay. Rhyme scheme is just the pattern of rhyme in a poem. Okay. So if the first 2 lines rhyme and then the next 3 don't, and then the 2 rhyme again, that's called a rhyme scheme. And the way you do that is we go by letters, and it's actually very simple. So if our first line of poetry is roses are red, we'll start that one with an A. Okay. Violets are blue. Do red and blue rhyme? No. So we're going to have to pick a new letter, B. So we only do the same letter if it rhymes with that line. Now we need something that rhymes with red. I got bumped in the head. So far we have roses are red, violets are blue. I got bumped in the head. Oh, that would be A again because red and head rhyme. You got bumped in the head too. That would be B again because it rhymes with B. Okay. But if you said roses are red, violets are blue, I like sugar, and so do you. Then that would be A, B, and then we have a different rhyme again because sugar doesn't rhyme with blue or red. So that would be C, A, B, C. And then our last line, so do you. You rhymes with blue, so that would be B again. So it would be A, B, C, B. Does that make sense? I'll have to type it out one day. We're going to get really into this on Thursday, and we'll have it all typed out. But that's just to kind of give you a basic idea. If they have the same rhyming, you put the same letter. If it's a new one, you put a new letter, and you just keep going through the alphabet. Okay, that is a rhyme scheme. Oh. Tone. Next, we have tone. Okay, the tone is set by the author. Okay, Tone and mood, we always talk about these two together. What is going on? My computer is glitching. Okay, your tone is set by the author. It's the attitude the author has about what they're writing. The mood is, I hate even saying this because I feel like so old, but this is not part of my regular vocabulary, but I find you guys understand it best when I say it's the vibe, okay? So the tone is what the person setting it sets, like that's the tone, that's the attitude I have. So if I walk in a class and I have a bad attitude about something and I use that tone, like your mom has that tone when she's mad at you, what kind of mood is that going to put you in? It's probably going to make you annoyed or upset or angry or sad or whatever. If I walk in and I found out a bunch of my students cheated and I have a terrible attitude and I'm like, I am so disappointed in y'all, blah, 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 blah. The mood in the classroom is not going to be great, right? Everyone's going to be ashamed or upset or, annoyed that they're getting punishment because some people cheated, that sort of thing. So the tone of the author affects the mood, okay? And the mood, again, is like the vibe. It's how everybody's feeling after what just happened. So you read something, how do you feel after that just happened? That's tone versus mood, okay? So we're going to skip right through. I'll let you see the definition. It's just how the reader feels about the text while reading, okay? Imagery. This unlocks your 5 senses. So if you are looking at, I keep doing that. So if you're reading something super descriptive, imagery is always descriptive. It makes you feel as if you're there, okay? So it'll talk about what you see, what the reader smells, what it feels like when they touch it, what it tastes like when they taste it. So if they say, I took a big bite of the red sweet cherry pie dripping down the sides of my mouth, I don't know, something really descriptive like that. That's going to be an example of imagery. You use it to appeal to the senses. The purpose of imagery is to really make the reader feel like they're there. The story is so much more interesting than if you say, I took a bite of cherry pie, as opposed to going into detail like I just did. It makes you feel like you're there. It puts the reader in the story, okay? That's always the purpose of imagery. Next up, we have theme. Okay, theme is commonly confused with the moral. Please don't do that. There is a difference. The theme is just the central idea of the work of literature, okay? It's the whole, like the main point. Now, you could have multiple, sometimes they're the same, but you could have multiple morals throughout a story. You can have multiple lessons that are taught in there, right? One story could teach you many lessons. The theme is just the central idea. What is the main point of all of this? Okay, what's the main thing? What is your thesis statement? What are you trying to convince me of? Of course, you don't have thesis statements in poetry or in literary, like fiction, but that's essentially the same thing. It's just the main idea. Okay, diction. Remember, diction, dictionary. This is the author's word choice. Why did they use the words they used? Okay, so if the author is talking, and let's say we're reading a poem, an Edgar Allan Poe poem, because he's good at this, he will mention death. He will say dark, dreary, creepy, screams. He always uses like this really, really dark imagery because all of his stories are pretty gory. He is like the king of American goth, like original. And by goth, I don't mean like the goths we know today. I mean like gothic literature. That's where that began. It means kind of creepy, that sort of thing. He's kind of also mystery. He's the founder of the mystery genre that we know here in America. So his diction he uses let us know what the tone is. That's the main purpose of diction. We know that this is going to be a scary story, even if the murder hasn't happened yet, but a black cat runs by, and then a mirror breaks, and then all of these superstitious things, and then there's a sound coming from the woods, and it's haunting, and it's dark, and it's at night, and none of these words may have said that anything bad is going to happen. But we know based off of these words, something bad is coming, right? Because it sets the tone. So authors use diction to set the tone, which is their attitude toward it, all right? And which will ultimately affect the mood. If they put creepy diction in to set a creepy tone, you will be scared, okay? Not always, but you know what I mean? Prosody. Okay, prosody is the study of sound and rhythm and poetry. Okay. Also, when you are reading poetry out loud, they will talk about you used a lot of prosody. Okay, and that's just the way you speak it. You weren't just monotoned. You spoke it as it was meant to be spoken. Because remember that there is a syllable count. There's a syllable count in poetry, and everything is on purpose. How short the lines are, how long the lines are, the rhyme scheme, everything in poetry, it kind of looks like sometimes they just throw it on paper, but it's usually very, very structured, especially all of the classic poetry. Okay, so it has a certain prosody in which it's supposed to be read with. And that is all 10 of our words. If you have any questions, let me know. Go play the Blook It and study your terms. Have a good day.